We are now year 5, day 2, session 3. So if we were to give that an artifact number, it would be what? 05.02.03. That was my terrible joke for the day. Really excited for today's session with Aryn. I'm seeing that we have a ton of people that have already joined us. So I'll get going. I won't talk your guys' ear off. I'll pass it over to the expert as soon as possible, but just some boring housekeeping to go through first. I promise I'll keep it short, but we always get asked these questions. So hopefully no one will ask these questions during Aryn's session. The recordings are available at the end of the day. They're all recorded. The slides are available in the docs section. So if you miss a part, you have to step away, whatever it is, you can't watch the whole thing. It is recorded and it will be available on this platform. I see the chat's going crazy. We've had a lot of great chat going today, so keep chatting. But if you have any questions for Aryn, we'll tackle them at the end of the presentation. You can throw them either in the Q&A section, or if you throw them in the chat, I'll be monitoring as well to make sure that we don't miss anything. Moving forward, we're gonna give Aryn about 30 minutes. I think it should be good. We'll save some time at the end for some Q&A. I'll introduce the next session, which will be tomorrow. And then we'll leave you all for the day. But without further ado, Aryn, I'm going to hand it off to you to talk about a topic that I get asked about on a very regular basis. Maybe a bit of a blind spot for me as well. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. But we're tackling the ISF reference model today and its revolution. So on that, Aryn, I will hand it off to you.
Thank you so very much, Chris. I'm excited to be here. Normally when you see me, I have another partner in crime, but we will talk about that in just 1 second. So just to introduce myself, I am Aryn Knight. I am the Associate Vice President of Clinical Research for the Memorial Hermann Health System. It's one of the largest health systems in the Houston area. I'm also a SOCRA board member, as well as the chapter chair for Houston and Galveston area. And last but not least, in my extra free time, I am the chairperson for the Clinical Research and Education Committee for the Texas Medical Center. So I will just go ahead and say my computer decided to do massive updates this morning, so I had to pivot, and I am on my iPad. And so if I have any glitches, I go ahead and apologize. But, you know, technology doesn't stop and doesn't care when we have things scheduled. So here we go. Oops. So my partner in crime is Matt. Everyone knows Aryn and Matt. We, you know, have our own little nickname. We've been doing this for quite a while, but Matt is on the run. I think he's somewhere in the Texas area now, moving from California to Florida. So I told him I got this while he's on transit. So you got me today, but Matt is definitely here in spirit. So let's talk about what we're here for. First of all, I have no conflicts to disclose, and everything that I express are my own personal opinions and experiences and do not represent any of the institutions I'm affiliated with. So what is the ISF reference model? Well, you know, Matt and I have been talking about this for a while, how we need to better engage the site's perspective with the ISF to the TMF. Well, we had this epiphany, you know, earlier this year where we started to get into the season of having these presentations, and we were like, you know what? We're kind of done with the talking. Let's start with some actions here. And so what we did is we reached out to some amazing people, and we decided, let's start and let's really put our words into action. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the TMF and the ISF to kind of line up as much as possible. Again, we want to mirror what the TMF reference model is. We are doing this in conjunction with CDISC. So we have the TMF reference model group full steam ahead behind us supporting this. Again, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to change anything with the TMF reference model to fit into the ISF reference model. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get the ISF to streamline better to the TMF. So again, that we can all come back together with a partnership to make sure we're getting this done and we're more efficient in our processes along the way. So as I mentioned, we have some fantastic CDISC leads that help us. And I want to just give a big shout out to Jamie and to Dawn for helping Matt and I get this initiative off the ground, really spearheading this with us and getting CDISC behind us in this initiative. So I just wanted to give a big shout out to them and a thank you. So why exactly is this needed? So what we're trying to do, as I explained, is we're trying to standardize the structure, the ISF structure, the file naming conventions and the terminology to line back up to the TMF as much as possible. Because sometimes what I have seen in my career on the site side, so I probably should have pivoted for those that are new and don't know me. I am on the site side. I've spent 24 years in this industry, all on the site side. So when I started getting introduced to TMF, I had to move my brain from a regulatory brain from a site perspective to what the TMF is saying and try to put the two together to make a cohesive connection. So what I've learned is that sometimes we don't always talk the same. In this field with so much different vernacular and acronyms and terms and things like that, we need to make sure that we can get these things lined up and standardized so that we can push forward to have a more collaborative experience when we're trying to do these clinical trials. Again, we want to help sites have a healthy and complete and up-to-date ISF, which then will be a downhill, a stream effect to all of you guys to have a healthy TMF in the long run. And so we want to decrease duplications of work due to sponsors and CROs contacting multiple people from a site perspective, asking for the same records over and over and over again. That is one of my biggest pet peeves in my career when I used to do ISF full time, is that I would get contacted multiple times asking for the same document over and over and over again. And when you ask us this and we say, please see attached, we've gotten to the point where we're frustrated of, why are you asking me for this again? I even had one study in my previous career where the study had been going on for like 8+ years. And the FDA decided, of course, to give us a knock on the door and, hey, we're coming. We had like 2 days to prep. And the sponsor flew down. And we spent all weekend trying to prep out. And they're like, where's this document? Where's this document? We don't have this. And I'm like, we have it all. You have it all, because we've been giving this to you along the way. Obviously, everything went well for our perspective. The device is now on the market, so it obviously went well for the sponsor too. But it just kind of shows some disconnect that we have here between the two things. Again, we want to standardize our naming conventions and terms, as I stated. We want to have that healthy ISF, and we want to decrease duplications along the way as well. Sorry, my tablet is deciding it doesn't want to move forward. There we go. So who is doing this? So we put out a call to action through CDISC. So what we have put together is a ISF TMF Reference Model Committee. It consists of members from all aspects of industry who have an interest in or experience in ISF, TMF, regs. And we wanted to make sure we included sites in this. This is very site driven, but we also needed to make sure that we had CROs and sponsors, as well as our service providers and vendors, all on board for this, because why put in the work if you don't have the people that need to support it, part of it as well? Because this will be a change. It will be a process here. We are very aware of that, but we feel very strongly that this does need to get into place to make us have a more cohesive environment. So as I mentioned, we put a call to action out in March of 2024 on LinkedIn through CDISC and our own personal LinkedIn accounts. We got about 55 people that were interested in participating, and of those 55 people, we narrowed it down to about 46 volunteers that we currently have that are part of this group for us. So what we decided to do, again, because this is a working group, that's a very large group of people, not much is going to get done in a singular meeting with that many people because we all have opinions. We decided to set up 5 sub-teams that were developed as part of this reference model committee. We have an evaluation group, a standards group, a proofing sub-team, outreach, and finally, training. So the evaluation subgroup, so what their responsibility is they are reviewing the existing ISF model structures that have been developed and shared. And as I had previously mentioned, we're not trying to reinvent the wheels. We know that there's ISF model structures that are already out there. We have contacted all of those vendors or people that have developed those and said, hey, please join us. Because what has happened and what we have noticed is that they're out there, but no one ever really truly adopted them to the point where that's what we're all working on. So yes, we have some great people that have these things, but what we need to do is we need to all come together to establish what we want to do and then to implement that and train on that and educate around that. So our evaluation subgroup is full steam ahead, have already been reviewing those existing ISF model structures and are making some great headway already in the little bit of time that we've gotten started here. So the standards subgroup, this subgroup is going to focus on what standards already exist or need to be created and tie it in with the standards bodies used within the CDISC for taxonomy and library terms. So again, this just shows what we're trying to do. We're evaluating, then we're taking what we've learned from the evaluations, and then we're standardizing it against what we have structured for the TMF so that we have the things lining up well. Our proofing subgroup, this subgroup will be just that, will be our key reviewers of the model being created to ensure it makes sense, there's no typos, and is ready for us to take it to the steering committee for review. Our outreach subgroup is what I'm doing today. We're the subgroup that focuses on the outreach to the public for presentations, creating those white papers, other forms of communications to raise awareness and ensure understanding of what we're trying to get done with the ISF reference model. Developing it and creating it is one thing. Getting it out there to the public, letting people know that it exists, trying to get that standardized along the way as the norm is another thing. So again, the outreach subcommittee, we've already gotten started. Montreal was so great in having Matt and I be their last presenters of their podcast this season. And so we got to kind of hint around and talk about it a little bit. But we're very, very excited to let people know we're here and this is what we're trying to get done. And then finally, our training subgroup. The subgroup works with the TMF reference model training groups to create adequate training for the industry. Again, getting it out there, letting people know, but then we have to train on it so that, again, we want to make sure that this does get adopted so it helps us all work together in a more streamlined fashion. So here's some of our long-term hopes for what we're trying to get done today. Again, representing the site side, what we're trying to do is to give sites a little bit of ownership of what their ISF looks like. Because if you've worked with sites and actually gone to sites and spoke to sites, you'll know that every site, we do ISF different. We all have, let me back it up. So we all have nowadays starting to get associated with e-regulatory systems so that we can streamline how we're doing our ISF. Well, there's not a lot of sites that are lucky enough to be part of that technology. So there are many, many sites that are still on paper, are transitioning to paper. I will say I have been lucky in my career that I've had the capability of working with electronic e-regulatory systems, but it doesn't always line up for all sites. And so what we're trying to do again is to give us better standardization and structure so that no matter where you are, if you're on a system, if you're not on a system, if you're still on paper, if you're not on paper, that we're still trying to structure things in a way so that that downstream effect is really going to read back into the TMF as much as we possibly can. Matt and I have given suggestions through the years of how we could potentially do that. We've talked about, can we have, a member of the TMF group be our liaison that always touches base with sites? Can we do this? Can we have TMF check-ins as often as we do with the monitors coming in? But what we've decided to do is this. Again, we do still feel strongly that we need to be more involved from a site perspective to the TMF to better understand what is needed in the long run. And as I mentioned on the podcast, and one thing that I don't want us to lose focus on is that, and this was very controversial on the podcast actually, because I was very surprised with the comments in the chat about this. Yes, sites are starting to understand what a TMF is, but not all sites know what a TMF is. And when I joined the TMF community many, many years ago, I myself did not know what TMF was. And I was trying to figure out, as I mentioned earlier, how does the ISF and the TMF work together? And so I know for myself, I've been a big advocate of the TMF and trying to get sites to understand how important and healthy the TMF needs to be. And that really does make sure that we are working our best to make sure that it's healthy in the long run. Yes, we're here to help advance medicine, but how do we do that is by getting things to market. That TMF is essential. So sites need to understand the significance of just that file structure in and of itself, so that we know, yes, we've seen the patients, yes, we've done all this work, but what is the end goal here? Having a healthy TMF, being able to get that over and get it into market is crucial for the work that we've done. So to go back again to our long-term hopes, is we want to make that ISF a healthy priority, not only for sponsors and CROs that maintain the TMF, but for sites too. We need to get them to better understand the importance of a healthy ISF throughout a trial. We need to define what a sponsor and a CRO needs and wants from sites, and how and when the site should provide that. We need to define how often the sponsors and the CROs audit a site's ISF. If you've heard me speak before, you've heard me get on my soapbox about this. The ISF is one of those things that were looked at the beginning, we're looked at for site initiation. Maybe we're looked at halfway through the study. We're definitely looked at when the FDA says that we're coming, and then we're looked at closeout pretty hardcore. But it's not one of those. It's not one of those things that when the monitor comes, they pay a lot of attention to when the trial is underway. Now, I want to say that's not the rule for everyone. There are some fantastic people that come out and they do make that ISF priority, but in the long-term scale of things, when a project's on the way, we're looking for patient safety, we're looking for consenting, we're looking for SAEs and documentation around all the things that are very important for sites. That is what a monitor is focusing on. So something has to give. Normally what gives and gets kind of pushed to the side is the ISF. Well, that's what we're trying to do, is we want to make that a little bit more of a priority so that we can make sure that it's healthy along the way. Again, from my perspective, I always want to be inspection ready. That is a big thing. I know that I hear that often, especially for Dawn, we need to be inspection ready. And that's so true for sites. And sites do not always feel that they're inspection ready, but this is one small way that we can try to help that. Again, we want to define how often those sponsors and monitors want to audit the TMF to see what they need from us. Again, this is a collaborative partnership that we need to create. And with this standardization, we're hoping that we can streamline this collaboration even more so that our ISF to the TMF from each site is as healthy as possible. We want to offer one day offer a way that the EISF and the eTMF can talk to one another so that, again, we can have things just going straight into the TMF, straight in, so that we're not having to have that middleman. I'm not trying to make anybody lose their jobs. Please don't come for me. I'm not trying to do that at all. But what we want to do is we want to have the two talk to one another, again, because we want to keep checking in on the health of both of these along the way. And then we want to have regulatory people at the sponsor CRO communicate with sites beyond just the startup. As I mentioned that already, that's one of the biggest things is we want to make sure that we have healthy conversations around the TMF health, the ISF health in the long run, because it does put a lot of stress on sites. Especially when you have extremely difficult projects running, high enrolling sites, difficult IP, difficult devices, something tends to give. And again, as I mentioned, it's generally the ISF. And I hate to say that because I love ISF. So what do we want to come back down to? What are we looking here? And so I told you about this. This is what we're doing. So what is the time frame for all of this? Well, I will say we are moving quick. Even for me, we are moving at a very good time frame. We kicked this off, our first meeting on April 16th. We had our kickoff meeting. We meet every other week. We were actually supposed to meet today, but I'm here with you all instead. So we missed this week, but we'll meet again in 2 weeks to kind of go over where we are with everything. On April 30th, we developed our sub-teams and we finalized those. And then May 33rd through the 10th, we went ahead and had our kickoff meetings with all the sub-teams. So our sub-teams are developed. They have set up who's running those sub-teams, what are we doing, how often are we meeting. So as I mentioned, our evaluation sub-teams is already up and running. They are doing some great work already. I keep seeing it in the background. All of the things that they're looking at in standardization of this process. So our goal for our sub-teams is we want to finish the evaluation piece by late August. That is our goal. Of course, time happens. The world evolves, but we really would like to stay on track with meeting that goal for late August. Then that would allow us to kick that over to the standards team who's waiting for a handoff. So we hope for the standards team to have their review finalized by October. Our proofing sub-team will then come in once they get their deliverables at whatever time that is, and they will start their process. The training will be at the very end. Our training sub-team will start working on it once they get their final deliverables. And then outreach, I am here today. It has started and it's currently ongoing. So again, as I mentioned, our end goal for today is we want to develop that healthy partnership between the TMF and the ISF. And the best way to do that is to standardize that. I feel like I'm Matt because Matt's superpower is standardization. And he's been very much saying standardize, standardize, standardize. I'm saying, and mine is like partnership, partnership, partnership. But if we bring the two together, it is going to make this just a healthy partnership of standardization. See how I try to get those healthy partnership of standardization working together to make us all have the perfect end result with a healthy ISF to the TMF. And I know it was a quick presentation today, and I so appreciate all of you bearing with me with my technical difficulties, but I'm always open for questions. Chris has kicked back on, so let's talk about this, Chris. What do you think?
First and foremost, I want to let the audience in on a little bit of a secret. Aryn told myself and Kim that she was a little bit anxious today because Matt wasn't there and because your computer decided to update. Well, it didn't show. You're
Oh, thank
amazing.
you.
So
Thank
good.
you.
I think you had us all enthralled throughout the whole presentation. So someone, I think, said that you were a trooper, or at least that's what I was thinking. Good on you for pushing through. So thank you so much, Aryn. I know it's always a pleasure to have you on. You've been a TMF week lifer up to now, so we really appreciate it. We do have a few questions. So I will start with maybe the hardest one, if that's okay, Aryn.
Yeah, let's go.
Jess Green asking if you're still looking for volunteers. It wasn't a hard
You
one.
know what, Jess? I would absolutely say yes. I'm still looking for volunteers, but as you can see, we're already starting. You more than welcome to email me and say, "Hey, I'm interested if anything comes available." As of right now, we are good on our volunteers, but I appreciate it.
Good. Now to some content, some hard-hitting questions. So first one's going to be from the one and only Oliver on our team. You spoke early on about sort of the adoption of this reference model in your presentation. Why do you think some of the past reference models haven't as been, I guess, adopted successfully?
So that's a really good question, and please, by my answer, I go back to these are my opinions. But I really do think we had in the early 2020s and life before COVID, we had very good intentions, and this was something that we really wanted to work on. I also was seeing that this was working on the side where the TMF reference model was really getting TMF reference model committee was really getting the TMF reference model finalized too. And so people decided, hey, I want to do this. But what I think the issue was is that they weren't talking to one another. And so, yes, you had, and I don't want to name other companies or other vendors or anything like that, but yes, you had this group and this group and this group, but they were doing it in silos where they weren't talking to one another. Also, did they have the appropriate people representing those within those groups too that were developing this? Because I did notice when I was in the TMF reference model committee very, very early on, and I was trying to find a way that the TMF worked with the ISF for that original version of the reference model, and it just wasn't working. So I decided, I'm going to step out because this is not my forte. I'm on ISF. But when we have people that don't do the work on every single day, trying to set up initiatives too, you're going to not have something that's really going to be fruitful and finally work out. So again, who's involved? What are we doing? Who's involved? All of those types of things. Can you still hear me? I think I just had some technical issues.
You're
Okay,
good. You're
great.
good. Yeah.
Okay, good. My earpiece was like, I want to connect to your computer now. So anyway, I think it was just a matter of we didn't have the right partnership going at the time. And so we're very excited. Again, we've reached out and had so many different people, part of vendors, part of CROs, part of sponsors, TMF experts, ISF experts, all like coming together for this initiative.
Thanks, Aryn. I'm gonna pick another question, but from Oliver. But it's a question that was asked a few times in the chat by Rahul as well, and just talking about a few things. I guess the adoption of ISF within the eTMF ecosystem, and you just sort of touched on that, which is why I wanted to bring up this question right away. And then Rahul talks more about, can you talk about like what do you mean by the ISF and the eTMF talking to each other? I also had a question as you were talking because, as you know, we speak to customers on a daily basis about eTMF, and we get questions all the time about, how far can we go in your eTMF when it comes to ISF documentation. Obviously, there are, TMF documents and ISF documentation that sort of overlap, but there's a whole series of documents that don't. I just threw a whole bunch at you, but I guess how do you see the systems talking? How do you see some of the other vendors approaching it? And then how do you see that sitting within the TMF ecosystem?
Again, I think when we were very much did our due diligence when we put this committee together to make sure that we had the right people involved, the right vendors involved as well. And so do I think that the adoption of it is going within the eTMF ecosystem is going to be a smooth, seamless one? Probably not, but nothing ever is when you try to change something. It will take some time. It will take time for us to get it out there, try to make sure that we have everyone on board to adopt it. All of the vendors, I keep trying to mention, I've seen some people throw some vendors in the chat. Have you talked to this one? Have you talked? We have talked to them all. Jamie and Dawn have been fantastic with making sure that we have all of the appropriate people. And so we do want them to all talk to one another. But do I think that that's going to happen overnight? No. We're going to have some patience. It's going to take a little bit of time. Like I said, Matt and I have been talking about this for 5+ years now, and we're finally putting this into action. I want it to not go fast so that we're not missing things along the way. I want this to be a process where we're really kind of thinking about it, making sure that we're doing the things that we need to do in the long run so that when we do try to put this into action, that is successful in the long run. So I can't actually specifically answer your question other than that is our goal. We will get there. It's going to take us a little bit of time, but I know we all have patience here.
Fantastic answer. I know someone had asked about sort of implementing the ISF reference model within the organization, and then I think they took down their question because I think you answered that so well, right? You really went into it, and I mean, like you say, change isn't always easy. Some people are really good with it. Look at you. Your partner in crime didn't show up today, and you absolutely killed this presentation. So kudos to you. But I just wanted to say some great questions all around. Some other people in the chat that are offering up their services for volunteers. So you may want to scour that after. Some names I recognize and some very smart people as well who are very well versed in the TMF ISF world. Last question we'll take, or at least unless there's more, obviously, from Carol. So regulatory agencies are becoming more focused on the TMF. Do you think this will encourage more people to engage in this process?
So Carol, and I saw that pop up on the chat, and I'm so glad, Chris, you actually asked that one because this is a great question. In my heart of hearts, do I think this will encourage more people to engage in this process? I would hope so. But the reality of it is, this is the back scene of the site. You look at the back of the curtain on stage, and this is what's running for sites. Sites are thin. We are stretched very, very thin. Sometimes sites will have 1 or 2 people doing all of the studies, including regulatory, doing this, doing that, all of the things that have to be done. Some research people are not appropriately trained either to know what these things are. And so if there's not people from a site perspective and the monitors and the CROs educating, I don't know how many sites truly know about the TMF, because when you're doing an SIV, when you're coming in and you're educating us on a study that you want to get off the ground, I can tell you in my 24 years, I never heard TMF mentioned once. Hence the reason that I had to actually Google it when I came into this community. I wanted to change. I know that it's changing. I know more people, especially from the site perspective, are hearing me, hearing Matt, trying to get this done. And so, again, I think that's the most important thing, is that we continue to encourage people to understand this process, to understand the regulations, to teach on those regulations, to give these free opportunities to learn as well, so that we can have the sites ready and prepared to have a better understanding of what a TMF is in the long run, and how we really have a part within that structure too.
Thank you so much, Aryn. I know we're probably going to finish a little bit early. Some fantastic questions all around. Again, our heartfelt thank you to you for pushing through today despite the circumstances. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.